Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. All right, and today's guest is Mitchell Levy. Hi, Mitchell.
Adi, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. Mitchell, I'm so excited to have you on today. You're going to give us some amazing information about elevator speeches and how to create them, which is, I'm so excited because you're going to teach us all about that and the process of it. But first of all, I have to introduce you because your credentials and who you are and what you accomplished, so amazing. So this is such a treat to have you. So let me go over the big list that I have here. So you are a global credibility expert. You are a 2-time TEDx speaker. You're an international best-selling author of over 60 books. So am I reading it correctly? Like over 60 books?
65 at the moment, but I figured once I hit over 60, I could just say over 60. And when I get over 70, I'll say over 70.
And this is amazing, right? You're an executive coach at Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches. And you interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility. So that led you to publish the 7-country international bestseller book. I need to ask you what countries those are.
Oh, over the top of my head, I remember US, Canada, Australia, UK, and then I don't remember. I don't know if I remember the rest. It might have been Netherlands. There's this India could have been one, but I remembered 4.
Amazing. But that's an amazing accomplishment. And then you delivered a really powerful TEDx on humanity, which we're going to include in the podcast notes so people can actually watch that and get inspired. You created courses. You created the Credibility Nation membership community to help those that live, learn, and surround themselves with others on the credibility journey. I mean, this is, I can go on, but I think this is like a summary of what you have done. And one would ask, when did you have the time to do to write 60 books, let alone doing the other things? So absolutely incredible. And today we're going to talk about your proven process, if you would, of the 3-second elevator pitch. But before we do that, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to Ken Cook from the Prepared Group, who actually introduced us. So thank you, Ken. And I just want to hear a little bit. I'm sure our listeners are very curious as well before we go into the 3-second elevator pitch and how we create it. If you can tell us a little bit about the credibility, being a credibility expert, that's not a usual thing. I don't always, it's not like you hear about leadership coaches or you hear about CPAs, or sometimes you need an explanation what a CFO is or a fractional CFO, but a credibility expert. I never had a credibility expert on my show. So I definitely would like to start with an explanation of what is a credibility expert and what is the Credibility Nation membership community. So we have a little bit more of a context.
So as you mentioned, I interviewed 500 thought leaders on the concept of credibility, which is really this Napoleon Hill journey so I can feel comfortable about using the title Global Credibility Expert. And by doing so, I've identified 10 values associated with credibility, and now I've been practicing deploying them at corporations and individuals for 2 years. So what is a credibility expert? It is someone who's helpful of allowing corporations and individuals to see the world from a perspective of credibility, which is very fluid, right? Credibility is a journey, not a destination. And so subsequently, it's changing as cultural norms change.
Okay. So how would you define credibility? Like, what's your definition of credibility?
It is the quality in which we are trusted, known, and liked. For some people, it's trusted, known, and loved. And then underneath each of those three pillars, there are 10 values that we live up to that allow us to come across credible in certain ways.
I love it. So you go by trust, know, and like, as opposed to, I interviewed Bob Burg on my podcast, and for him, it's like know, like, and trust, because you have to know first, like, and then trust. Do you have a certain order that you like to look at those?
I actually, so what happens is we all live in a world of, I love Bob Burg, by the way, but we all live in the world of marketing cookie cutter approaches. We're born, I believe we're born credible. And then what happens is we get structured into approaches that are passed down through generations that aren't necessarily credible. They may work for some people, and so therefore they're pushed down. And so when I first did the research, I did what everyone else did. Everyone knows know, like, trust. So I went with know, like, trust. But the truth is, the construct is, it's not about in the construct of know, like, trust. The way it was defined was, well, you need to put your name in the yellow pages. People need to know about you first. The thing that's interesting is it's not about knowing about you. That is like such a small piece, because everyone has a camera and a microphone. The ability to actually know of hundreds or thousands or millions of competitors in your space is so easy for any of your prospects. And so the first thing that happens is for your listeners, let's say they get lucky enough that their prospect jumps on their webpage. They have 3 seconds when they go on the webpage or go on their social media, 3 seconds for the person to generate enough trust or get enough trust that the person can accomplish what they say they're going to do, to want to spend the time to get to know them. And so when I first did the TED Talk, which was the 28th most popular, even when you look at my book, it says know, like, trust. But in practice, that first 3 seconds is 100% focused on trust. Once you've generated enough trust that they want to then spend the time to get to know you, they'll spend another minute as they're getting to know you. You'll build upon the trust. You'll build upon whether or not they like you. And that'll help decide whether or not you even get to the phone call or get to that first meeting.
Makes sense. So you help businesses, basically corporations, companies, to actually establish that trust. So for them to establish the trust with their prospects or customers, right?
That's a part of it. So it's more than just trust, because trust are the things, the elements associated with trust is authenticity, vulnerability, integrity, being coachable, right?
Right.
But on integrity, it's your external integrity. It's what you show on the outside. The thing is, when people get to know you, and that is, to get to know a company, you don't know the company, you get to know the individuals of the company. You need to know, is the company overall, are the people servant leaders? Are they there? They help? Do they have the intent and commitment to do the right thing? And when you're talking to an individual, what is their internal integrity? Are they happy being there, or would they rather be doing something else? Because in today's world, if we see somebody who feels phony, because integrity-wise, they'd rather be somewhere else, but they're doing the job, that's going to come across in terms of, as they get to know you, like, there's something felt wrong about this person, about this company. Let's go to the competitor. So trust is important, but also the fact that we need the great resignation comes with a great rehire. The great rehire encourages or forces us, if we're running companies, to allow our people to be transparent, to allow our people to be out there as representatives of us. And if we can't do that, like Blockbuster Video, like Tower Records, we should be preparing for disappearing.
Absolutely. Wow, Tower Records. I haven't heard that for years. Holy, threw me back. Wow. All right. So what are the 10 aspects of creating the credibility that you mentioned?
Well, I mentioned super quickly, so I'll just go through them quickly. Under being trusted, it's authenticity, external integrity, vulnerability, and coachability. Now, I say the word external integrity because you'll hear it under being known. Under being known, it's being a servant leader, being of service to others. It's having the intent as well as the commitment to do the right thing. And the fourth element, or the eighth overall, but the fourth element of being known is internal integrity. And the difference there is simply, and this is what happens to a lot of leaders, a lot of politicians, is externally, they may have a squeaky clean record, but internally, they do things like cheat on their taxes, cheat on their spouses, cheat on their diets. And subsequently, when that comes out in the marketplace for those people who care, it affects both. So what happens is we need to look at them separate because humans look at them separate. And then the last two is, and I love having a formula for being likable. So let's be really clear. If you want to be likable, there are two primary things to focus on. Okay. One is share your stage. So what did you do at the beginning of this conversation? You went out of your way to thank Ken Cook, who's, by the way, a mega genius. You went out of your way to thank Ken Cook for introducing us. That's how we got to know each other. Now, what's interesting, I call that, it's you could say sharing your stage. I call that spreading cred dust. It's sharing the ideas, thoughts, and actions of other people. Those people who are good, who do this well, big speakers do this often, but it's not that hard to give somebody else credit. By the way, this is what happens inside corporations where the manager takes credit for what the people do. Like, that's the stupidest thing. The best thing you could do is pay credibility, pay homage to the people who work for you, who are doing amazing things, and bring out their genius. Now, so two things you need to do to be likable: share your stage and show respect. Now, typically when I say show respect, it's coming early, coming prepared, coming with your heart, right? So it's making sure that in today's world, we all have one of these.
Yes, we do.
Right? And
for our listeners that are not watching us, some of them are watching, some of them are listening, that is called a cell phone. Smartphone.
So you've got a computer that has more power than from the IBM ENIAC ever created. You have a computer that fits in your pocket that allows you 5 minutes ahead of time to learn a lot about the person you're meeting with. And your opportunity to come prepared is at your fingertips, and you not doing this is showing disrespect for the person you're interacting with. So you want to be likable, share your stage, and share respect.
100%. I love those. That is so true. And I know you mentioned I went out of my way. Truthfully, I didn't even think about it until you said it. I mean, I don't feel like it's out of my way because I like doing that, right? I mean, it's the acknowledgement of, you have to acknowledge what works, right? And I think I'm a true believer that you need to give credit to those that deserve the credit, because then you're going to get more of that. And you also create a better world because you make others feel good, right? Because, we get hit day in and day out with bad news, and this is bad and that is bad. And, you never get a letter from the IRS saying, good job, Mitchell. Good for you for paying the taxes. Good for you for having high income. And now you paid more taxes. No, what letters do you get? You go, oh, you didn't pay. We're going to, whatever, all those. That's what we are used to getting. But when you actually get good news, when you get acknowledgments, I mean, that's how we create a nice environment around us. And I believe that that's the way we can control the environment around us and create an ecosystem, if you would, that aligns to your values, right? So I totally agree with you. And being prepared shouldn't be a big problem. As you said, all the data is there. Read the website, look at the LinkedIn. You don't even have to read the website if you don't want to, because LinkedIn today, majority of the people actually put everything on their LinkedIn profile, and you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot about their education, about their background, about their experience, about who they are, what they like. You can read some articles. Doesn't have to take a long time. So I agree with you. Those are definitely very good advice about how to be likable.
And by the way, thank you for my aha moment. Because you just said, so it's interesting. You said under the thing of being likable, you said give credit. So credit is a form of
credibility.
Give credit to those that deserve it. So when I talk about, spreading cred dust, I might actually say, and I'll remember you, give credit to those that deserve it. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah. You're very welcome. Yeah, I think that's, now you can give credit to me. I'm just kidding.
I will.
And I will use that sentence and I will give credit to you. I said, all right, my good friend Mitchell, he actually liked that. So that's why I'm repeating it, because you know how it is. Sometimes you say things, but when you get acknowledged for it, you go, oh, wow, yeah, that was a good sentence. All right. So now that we have that established, let's talk about the elevator pitch, because that's what we want to talk about in terms of a process. You know, this is the System Simplified podcast where we talk about processes and procedures. And I like to I like to have different talking points and different guests from different industries, but I always like to tie it into a process. So when you and I spoke before the podcast, we talked about how we're going to tie in the 3-second elevator pitch into a process, which is basically the process of creating that elevator pitch. But I'd like to hear more from you about that. You call it CPoP, right?
So I call it a CPoP.
CPoP.
It stands for Customer Point of Possibilities. So here's what I'd like you to think about. For the time being, I want you to drop this construct of an elevator pitch. I want you to drop the construct of a value proposition, and I'm going to tell you why. To be credible, you need to be a servant leader. You need to be of service to others. The concept of the first words out of your mouth being a value proposition or a elevator speech, both of those start with a simple word, either I or we. So you notice if you start the first sentence with I or we, if someone says, who are you? What do you do? And you start with I or we, you're violating the credibility practice of being of service to others. I help you. If I said something like, I help you be credible, that's not about you. That's about me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So for a moment, just for everybody, just drop this construct of it. I'll tell you where it comes in so you don't have to lose it. What I want you to think about is as much fun as it is, think about that playground, or for the tech folks, think about that sandbox that you play in. So imagine if you can create a architecture, you can create a sentence, you can create 10 words or less that paints a picture of either the playground you play in or the sandbox that you happen to be an expert in. What happens when you do that is very cool. If you're speaking to a prospect or if you're speaking to a potential referral partner, they're going to look at that and go, wait a second, that's a sandbox I know about, or that's a sandbox I want to know about, or that's a sandbox I want to refer people to. Tell me more. Right? So let's talk about the construct of this sandbox and what a construct of a CPoP, Customer Point of Possibilities. The best way to think about it is your customer point of possibilities is who you serve. So what is as fine-tuned as possible? What is that audience you serve? And then it's either what is the pain point you address or what is the pleasure point you deliver? Right. And so in some cases, it could be what is the aspiration point you're looking towards? So I'm going to share mine. I'll share a couple. So mine is, or the way I would normally say it, if I'm talking about, I might say my CPoP is, but maybe 30, 40, 50,000 people know what a CPoP is. So what I would typically say is clients attracted to me, right? Because this doesn't have to do with me. I'll just say clients are typically attracted to me, and then I'll throw a pause, and then I'll share my CPoP. So clients typically attracted to me, leaders living their values and making a difference. So if you see me there and you're value-based, you're like, oh, that's really interesting. I relate to it. Or what happened for me is, and making a difference helped me fine tune, because there are some people living their values, but they may not be the right values, right? They may not fit into the credibility space. I'll give you another example, and then
let's repeat it. So yours is, so when you meet somebody, let's say I met you for the first time, say, Mitchell, what do you do?
Thank you. Thanks for putting me on the spot. The types of clients typically attracted to me, leaders living their values and making a difference.
Okay, so leaders that are living their values and making a difference. All right. Well, I think I fall into it. So would they ask you then, what do you like? How do you help them?
What often happens next is tell me more.
Yeah. What do you do for them?
That's exactly. So the proper response is tell me more. Now, remember I said, throw out your elevator pitch, throw out your value proposition. That's when you could bring your 30-second elevator pitch or your value proposition back in, because what they're now doing is they're inviting you to share what you do in that playground. Right. So it's because what happens, one of the things I found in the 500 interviews is there are people who have salespeople blockers. Just like we have ad blockers on websites. So with a salesperson blocker, if the first thing you say is, remember, I'm going to pick on insurance salespeople and realtors, right? So you go to a networking event and you say, hey, what do you do? I'm a realtor. And then all of a sudden you spend 5 or 10 minutes them talking about all the stuff they do. Go, oh my God, I can't believe I asked, right? So one of my favorite CPops was from an insurance person. And his CPoP, are you ready? Very cool for him. Businesses with an upcoming crisis. 4 words. Businesses with an upcoming crisis. Well, that's interesting. I run a business. Do you think I have an upcoming crisis? Then he gets to launch into his tell me more. For me, leaders living their values and making a difference. Adi, you're there. You live it. You are you. What I'd love to talk to you about is, given that you and I are so in sync with who we are and what we do, how do we play together? How can I have you refer more people my way, and how can I support you? Right? That would be the tell me more. What's interesting about the tell me more, we all get so stuck on memorizing our elevator pitch or memorizing our value proposition. If you can remember 4 words or 8 words, mine is 8 words, then that's what you say every time. And the tell me more is very dependent on who you're talking to. Let me share one more, and then we'll focus on you if you're okay with that.
Yeah. So then, so remind me again. So it's client point of
possibilities.
Possibilities. So the reason why you call it CPoP is because it's a client point of possibility. I'm just trying to think in terms of like, why is it called a CPoP?
I actually said I started with customer versus client, but for some people, those are synonymous. And when I first started doing the interviews, it's really interesting. When I started doing the interviews, I called it customer point of pain, because I always thought, well, what is the pain point you're like in terms of this playground? What is the pain point you're addressing? But there are people who you don't really want to shove the pain point. Like if you're dealing with trauma, abused people of sexual assault, you don't really want to throw the pain point in there. You want to put an aspiration point instead. And one of my friends, a guy by the name of Rajesh Sethi. Rajesh has been in Silicon Valley for 30 years. He's helped hundreds of companies really figure out what their secret sauce is. And so I did the CPoP exercise with him. And it turns out for Rajesh Sethi, his CPoP is so amazing. Game changers looking for their secret sauce. And he goes, his video testimonial, he goes, Mitchell, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never been able to say it so succinctly, so
That's
articulately.
Amazing, so if somebody asks Rajesh, like, what do you do? He says, game changers that are looking for their secret sauce. He doesn't even say, I help. I mean, it's just, I'm honestly trying to understand, like, how would it flow in a conversation?
That's
so
where, so
think that you are.
would say clients that are typically attracted to me, game changers looking for their secret sauce.
Okay. So you kind of like, somebody will ask, Raji, what do you do? And he is not going to answer directly, but he's also not going to answer it in a totally non sequitur way. He will just say, well, let me tell you, clients that are attracted to me are game changers that are looking for their secret sauce.
Yeah, because what happens if you say, I help game changers looking for their secret sauce? Now you got the I in there.
Yeah.
Once again, right?
And it's all about you, but you want to make sure that, you pick their interest. And if they want to ask more, they will ask more. And if not, it's okay, because that's what I learned as well. If people don't ask you, don't tell, because they're not interested. And all you're doing is you're just shoving your information in their face and they're not ready to receive.
See, we are in sync. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's. Do you mind? Can we?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm all looking forward to it.
So who typically is that audience that you serve? Who is that audience that you work with?
So we work with entrepreneurs that are growing and scaling, or they are transitioning, meaning they want to sell their business, they want to merge with another company, or they're acquiring another company. Because what we do is and I know this is not the CPoP, I'm just telling you so you'll have the background. What we do is we create, document, improve, and implement processes and procedures. So what we do is we basically bring order into companies, and continuity and consistency and efficiency and effectiveness. All right, so now you have all those words. Let's see how we make it into a 3-second CPoP.
So is it typically, what size company are you typically working with?
Well, we work with companies that are anywhere between, it's a range of companies, but I would say on the lower end will be 5 million in revenue, 10 people, to all the way to, let's say, over 100 million, 100 people, 200 people. And they're scaling. So they don't have defined SOPs, right? They don't have defined processes and procedures. They're super busy. They're super into what they're doing. So they do not have the time to write it themselves. They don't have the expertise on how to write it. It's on their to-do list. They know that they need processes and procedures, but they just don't find the time. So we fill that gap of, we have the expertise, we know how to do it, and we create it.
Got it.
And we also just companies that are not there are companies that still need to expand. They still need more leads. They still didn't figure out their sales or their marketing, and they're struggling. We don't work with struggling companies. We work with the companies that have the opposite problem of, like, we have all these leads coming in. Now I want to grow to the next level. I don't want to work 60 hours a week. I don't want to work 80 hours a week. I have a few employees that have all the knowledge in their heads. I need that knowledge transfer. Those are the people that we work with.
Huh. That's interesting. So if there was 80% of the revenue coming in, because there are two distinct clients, right? It's the companies which are scaling and hitting the wall, and then the companies that want to sell. So they're transition companies.
But I think it's the same. It's a sort of scaling, because in order to scale, hitting the wall, the plateau, in order to get to the next level, they know they need to document. And you have the companies, it's a different type of scaling, because you are moving. Why do you need to document? So there is a legacy, there is a continuity, so you have better value for the company. So I think it is just, but let's concentrate on the businesses that are growing and scaling.
And which represents 80% of the revenue that comes in the door?
Yeah, that one.
I kind of thought so. Okay. And what is their biggest problem?
The biggest problem is lack of organization, lack of order. It's basically lack of consistency. It's repeating themselves over and over instead of having a process. For example, let's say you have a construction company and they are growing. They have all this demand. And now they are bringing on board they need to bring on board another 3 estimators. Well, the amount of time that it will take to train 3 new estimators, to onboard them, and how do you explain to them what they need to be doing if nothing is documented, and it's all in the existing sales manager head, the owner, whomever it is. It's not documented. There is no consistency. It's not effective. It's not efficient. How do you actually impart the knowledge to them? And that's the problem we solve. For example, this morning I was talking to a company where the owner basically repeat the same sales training to every new employee that they hire. So what we did is I recorded it. him explain it to me. And now we're creating this sales training and onboarding of new salespeople that can be repeated without him being there present.
Nice. Now, if they're growing and scaling, what percentages are they typically growing at?
I can't tell you like a number on that, but it's, they are definitely growing, multiplying.
Would you consider them high growth, or is that a category that fits, or not necessarily?
I mean, they could, but not necessarily. I don't know where you're going, like high growth company, but could be.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've got 5 words for you, and it's hard because it's the big issue is because the companies typically range from 10 to 100 employees or 5 million to 50 million. I was looking for something that's consistent among that, whether or not they're high growth or fast growth.
Fast growth, yeah, it's fast growing and really want to get to the next level, right? So it's outgrown the stage that they're in and they have to get to the next stage.
Love it. Okay, I got something for you that is 5 words then.
Okay, let's see.
I'll put it in chat so you can see it because I'm a visual person. You need to see it, but then I'll say it as well. Fast growing companies lacking consistency.
I like it.
Here's what's interesting. A lot of what you do when you talk about it, when I look at your website, are the tactics that you deploy.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual playground you play in is the quagmire that a company gets themselves in when they were at a certain size and it worked. And then as they started growing, that lack of consistency of systemized processes that make it simple for them to grow and scale without, trying to throw more resources at it, they're missing that. And they've got to sort of deconstruct and reconstruct. And that's where your firm comes in.
I love it. I mean, that's genius, Mitchell. Absolutely. Because it is definitely, I mean, that is, wow. Fast growing companies lacking consistency. Very true.
Nice. And by the way, how I explained it is one way that you can get to your tell me more, right? That's, what's interesting about the tell me more. It's going to be I said it that way so you can hear it from what I knew you did, right? So I did it because you were my audience, right? When you're talking to, it depends. If you're talking to a company that's 5 million, they want to go to 15, you're going to talk about it differently than the companies at 15. They may be going down to 10 and it's time to sell. Your tell me more is going to be different for both of those. That said, your CPoP is still pretty consistent.
Yes. And the way that you say it, like, okay, so I have to practice this. So it's fast growing companies that lack consistency. So let's role play. So let's say you ask me, what do you do, Adi?
Sure. Hi, Adi. Nice to meet you. What do you do?
Well, Mitchell, I work with companies, or the companies that we work with are fast growing companies that lack consistency.
Tell me more. What does that mean?
Well, let's take, for example, a company that is growing and scaling. They grew from 5 million to 20 million in the last year. They had to add all these employees, etc. And they figured out that they don't have well-documented processes and procedures. And that's where we come in, because we actually create, document, and implement those processes and procedures.
Love that. By the way, just to be clear, as much as I've known you, I didn't quite know you this way. Now I see how we can connect even better.
Excellent. Well, now tell me, what do you do?
So the clients typically attracted to me, leaders living their values and making a difference. And how that connects with what you're doing is, as companies are growing, not only do they need processes and procedures and an opportunity to scale at a pace that's beyond what they're used to, they also need to live in today's world. And they need to live in a world where they're adding value to the community, to all the stakeholders. And that's where we come in, is to provide an infrastructure, a common language, a way in which they can show up in such a way that every employee, every stakeholder who's involved in the company is proud to be there.
Oh, wow. So how do you do it? You see, that's the conversation just continues, and it's so interesting. I love it. And for our audience right now, our listeners, our viewers, we did not rehearse it. This is live. This is Mitchell showing his superpowers by interviewing you, creating the CPoP, and then completely transforming the way that you present your business. This was amazing. That is absolutely incredible, Mitchell.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. Now, you added a word, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You had said fast-growing companies that lack consistency.
Oh, yeah.
That's not a bad. I ended up going with the word lacking versus that lack, right? It's still 2 syllables. I don't know if it really matters. I typically end up going for a verb. So lacking, versus that lack. And because for me, when I think of it, this is really a very interesting nuance. If you say that lack something, now it feels like a real negative. Where I know it's strange, but saying the word lacking consistency, like who can't? I'll raise my hand. As much as I think I'm good at processes, I'll raise my hand. We are lacking consistency across the board. Absolutely.
Absolutely. No, I can see that for sure. Wow. That's incredible. So now our listeners are like chomping at a bit. How can I get a hold of Mitchell? So how can they get a hold of you?
You know, I'd want to, we'll start off with mitchelllevy.com. If you want to book time on my calendar, you can get to it directly there. There is a free offer that will be in the notes. And the offer is associated with something that we do called the Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp. So you can go to ultimatecredibilitybootcamp.com. And once a quarter, we help people show up credibly. So we not only have a course, and we want you to take and understand your CPoP, but also how do you live yourself both on and offline, being consistent with your CPoP. So this is where it goes. I'll just say, do I have a second to finish this thought?
Of course.
It goes beyond an elevator pitch. Your CPoP is your compass. When you have a compass, you make better decisions. And when you make better decisions, you demonstrate better behavior. And when those are aligned, I have to tell you, it is as simple as it sounds. When those are aligned, people get attracted to you because you say who you are and you show up the way you say you are. It's kind of simple. So anyhow, the Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp is the place to go. We'd love to have you come and join us there, and we'll make sure that those notes are in the notes as well. The free offer is the cool part, is in the bootcamp. We have, for each of the modules we focus on, there are steps you should take and questions that we ask. We took all of those steps and questions and put them into a infographic. And that's what we're sharing as the free offer, is just an opportunity for you to actually see the graphic. And so if you're a DIY person, you want to do it all yourself, we're going to give you everything you need so you can do it yourself.
Wow, fantastic. That is so generous. Absolutely. Everyone go to those resources. It will be on the show notes, and take advantage of it, because as you can see, it's absolutely, Mitchell knows what he's talking about. The credibility just speaks for itself, honestly, because you just showed how well you do what you do. And it's like magic, just like ask me those questions and you come up with a CPoP, which is incredible. So I definitely appreciate that. And I really appreciate you being a guest on this podcast. It was a pleasure interviewing you. Thank you.
Oh, same here. By the way, I love doing this with people. It's easier when somebody lives out loud and lives their values. Sometimes it's not as easy because there may be some things that get in the way. But with you, it was simple and easy. And I'm looking forward to our continued conversations and our work together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mitchell.
You're welcome. Thanks. Bye, Adi.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.